Welcome, everyone, to Indications and Warnings with Chuck Pfarrer, co-produced by Alan Brewer. Chuck and I are recording this episode of Indications and Warnings on June 29, 2025. It is day 1,222 of Russia's full-scale genocidal invasion of Ukraine. It appears that Russia is going to carry on this terror war through the air relentlessly all summer long, Chuck. Last night, over 500 drones and missiles of various types were launched by Russia across the entire country.
Yeah, it was a brutal attack. We're seeing some interesting changes in the drone tactics. I don't know what they mean yet, but last night, out of 477 shaheeds, 277 of them were decoys. And you would think that would be a bit higher ratio than maybe you'd expect, fully 50% decoys. But of course, the idea of a decoy is to divert air defenses. There's also been developments. I put up a new infograph today, new Pathfinder Shaheed drones modified. Their payloads are replaced by electronic warfare gear. Interestingly, though, for the first time, thermal cameras that are used not only in target selection, but to help the drone navigate. So, for example, I'm flying over a field, I come to a cooler river. There's algorithms on board to recognize the waypoint of the river and adjust the flight paths accordingly. But it was a brutal attack. And again, as you and I were talking about before the show, they're aiming at high-density population centers. So, though 88% of the drones were shot down and missiles as well, that's a good number. But everything that's getting through is killing civilians.
It is, and this even debris falling from the destroyed incoming drones and missiles ignite fires. The film from, again, all across Ukraine, first responders rescuing people, from their beds, from their bedroom windows in high-rise apartments and schools. And again, medical clinics being struck. This is the endless target list of Russia committing terror against Ukrainian civilians. If they can hit high-rise apartments, schools, hospitals, clinics, train stations, and, of course, power infrastructure, that's what they're going to hit.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to even suggest there's any military or moral equation here, but you look at the targets that Ukraine addresses. They are war-related production facilities, manufacturing facilities, oil refineries, air bases, missile and weapons depots. These are the targets that Ukraine strikes. We have this massive attack last night by Russia. They're not addressing military targets. They are hitting civilians in their beds at night. I just love getting this one in, and I just had to do it. So a MiG-31K fighter, of which Russia has only a couple of dozen, designed to fire the undefeatable Kinzhal missile. Well, you got your money's worth on that, Vlad. One of them was shot down, intercepted, broke up in flight, and the only thing it did was knock the black porch off somebody's house in Mykolaiv.
Yeah.
Three of the missile is sitting there pretty much intact, That's really what I call, bang for your hypersonic weapon buck right there.
Yeah. Well, just to recap last night's attack by Russia, and again, it was a nationwide attack. In the Cherkasy region in Smila, 6 people were injured when a 9-story apartment building was struck. In Mykolaiv, They did strike warehouses and infrastructure in Ivano-Frankivsk. There was a fair amount of severe damage from falling debris. This is in the west of Ukraine. Sumy up in the northeast was also targeted. Poltava, Zaporizhia, even as far west as Lviv, where they struck infrastructure. So it's another night of terror. Russia is also increasing its ability to manufacture these drones en masse. It has been reported that North Korea will send 25,000 workers to this newly enlarged Shahed drone factory that Russia is completing. They are going to be able to basically send thousands of drones a month against Ukraine, Chuck.
Yeah, and looking big picture for a moment, and this is a bit aspirational because Ukraine really needs more air defense. But systems that are not as vaunted or capable or as expensive or tightly controlled as Patriot and THAAD, the Shahed problem is solvable by short-range air defense systems. AAA, air defense artillery, systems like the Gepard, legacy systems like the Hawk, which is a highly portable, surface-to-air missile complex. But, your Hawk battery can be delivered by 6 Jeeps, not trucks, Jeeps. So it's, looking at the ingress maps, there were 4 or 5 principal routes, highways by which these Shahed drones entered the country. I'm beginning to see, by seeing these patterns over and over again, the Russians seem to have discerned seams in Ukrainian sensor networks. There's a couple of super highways, and I hope Thomas will be showing this as we speak. You can see these massive sort of highways where the drones did hit. And there's one thing that, the Shaheds are not very fast. They weren't terribly sophisticated, although they're getting more sophisticated. But one of the things you could see, and as Alan pointed out, the targets in Lviv, some of the drones entered from the north, turned to the west, went back to the northwest, circled around, and in some cases attacked Lviv from the west. So that's a function of their range. Not so much their capability, but pretty significant range.
Yeah, and that's also significant. These drones are following more and more circuitous paths to their final destinations. And I think this, and of course, all the Shahed debris that falls in the cities is inspected, collected, various components that survived the crash are examined. That's how Ukraine knows that Russia is upgrading these Shahed drones. They are literally finding paths. That's why this Pathfinder drone is so aptly named.
Yeah, and they are getting more sophisticated. And again, but I will say this: they're losing. They launched this massive attack, and 88% of it is neutralized. But that is almost nothing to clap yourself on the back on, because you've got to protect the innocent civilians that are the targets.
Yeah.
So there's one good thing about this, and that is 88 cents of every Russian dollar that is spent sending Shaheds, you might as well burn in the backyard. But we'll see how these new Pathfinder Shaheds, we're going to see how this affects, megatonnage on target. But again, we'll have to see. We'll have to, we might be looking at an inflection point. Let's see how capable these Pathfinders actually are.
Yeah. What else has Russia done with drones? They're arming them a little bit differently, more lethally by basically putting shrapnel into the explosives that the drones deliver, and that's just an atrocious thing to do when you're aiming at city centers and marketplaces and train stations.
It's yeah, and there's also been I'm glad to say we flagged this about 3 weeks ago with an uptick in fire response among the first responders, that there were many more fires happening. We clocked that as it happened, and it turns out they have used a higher percentage of incendiary warheads on these shaheeds, which is even more vicious. They are attacking apartment buildings with incendiary munitions. Come on, show me in your targeting handbook where that's legit. And of course, it is not.
Yeah, it's not. Before we get to the maps, a couple of more interesting special operations and sabotage by Ukrainian forces. I think attacking air bases again deep inside Russia, taking out some Su-34s, some helicopters, and then probably with the help of partisans on the rail line between Tokmak and Melitopol, striking and setting on fire a fuel train and a train carrying military supplies. But let's talk about how Ukraine is targeting the Russian Air Force. Not with a spiderweb size operation, but very pinpoint operations, again, inside Russia.
Yeah, they're beginning to have a real effect on force posture. Russians have lost somewhere between 10 and 15% of their combat aircraft in combat in Ukraine. So let's take the floor of that 10%. They've lost at least an additional 5 to 7% in accidents, incidents, etc. There is a term in Air Force calculation called imputed losses. So that doesn't mean something that gets shot down. It means an airframe that you have flown over and over and over again, and it needs maintenance. You defer it, and pretty soon that big hunk of machinery is no longer a strike fighter. It's fit to park in front of the VFW. So just slightly extrapolating, we could be looking at somewhere between a third and a half of Russia's combat air power is no longer in the fight. And when you just dig into this deeper, there are parts that aren't available for Russia to utilize in these aircraft. That corruption within the aerospace forces has always been incredible. That even before the war, they had airplanes dropping out of the sky because the parts were not legit. Somebody sets up a factory in Kazakhstan and says, I'm making widgets, but he's making them out of aluminum instead of magnesium. So Russia's paying the price here. And you know what? We've never seen the air force of a superpower attacking Ukraine. It's never been that way. So we'll see. And the principal means of force projection right now, with the exception of the missile trucks like the Tu-95, it's lob bombing these glide bombs. And if that's the only trick in your bag of tricks, that isn't that much.
No, it's not. In the first year and a half of this full-scale invasion, the Russian Air Force didn't participate as fully as it was expected to. Only since coming up with the glide bomb, and Russia launches, the Air Force launches, 50 or 60 of these glide bombs a day. But it was only after they came up with that tactic that the Russian Air Force became fully engaged. And of course, they're fully engaged in the terror war as well, launching the ballistic missiles.
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing about that in 2024 to 2025, the number of glide bomb attacks increased by a factor of 16. So where they used to send one, now they send 16. And the fact also remains that their glide bombs are relatively rudimentary compared to the JDAM-ER, compared to a lot of Western weapon systems. So what the Russians do in lieu of accuracy, they send more, and we have also seen this, they send humongous 2,500-pound bombs, even 2,000 kilogram bombs. Huge, huge bombs. Accurate? I don't know. But if you're going to blow up the whole city block, I guess, that's what you wanted.
Yeah, that's what they did in Kherson to basically blast apart the central administrative building of Kherson. It wasn't being used at the time, but it was, I think, a symbol of Kherson Oblast that people were very proud of, and Russia simply wanted to destroy it, which they did with the glide bomb. So the more planes that Ukraine can sabotage, the better. But Ukraine's also focused on sabotaging the rail line that Russia has now completed. It goes down through Melitopol, Tokmak on its way to Crimea. But their trains are not really safe there, are they?
No, not at all. The area within, I guess, 100 kilometers outside of Melitopol is bandit country. It is the seat of something between a partisan campaign and a smoldering insurgency. I don't know where the exact line is, but it's right there. And of course, rail systems are the most effective. Fuel to payload, ground line of communication is always going to be a railroad. You can move your entire unit, soup to nuts, everything, in a string of 80 flat cars. So it's a vital, it is a vital link. The interesting thing about railroads are, they're always going to be there. So you just need a geolocation. You need a culvert. You need a bridge. You need a switch. You can hit it. And now that's with standoff weapons, but you've got insurgents here. And the good thing about waiting for a train is you don't have to worry if it's coming the other direction, right? It's only going to be there. That allows you to set standoff ambushes, right? So 3 of my buddies, a 6-pack of beer and 4 RPGs, that's it. 4, we could stop any train that's coming. Absolutely. And that's what it takes. And those sort of highly lucrative asymmetrical operations, and that's what the Ukrainians are doing. They're attacking these trains with standoff anti-tank weapons, hitting the locomotive, and then surging it with first-person drones.
Yeah,
it's working.
Yeah, and if it's a fuel train, it's an extra good target because once you set it on fire, you can basically burn down the whole track line of cars. And that's what they hit between Melitopol and Tokmak. Also hit a military supply train with armored vehicles. Before we get to a couple of maps, and we're going to take a good in-depth look at what's happening in Kreminna, General Syrskyi, the overall commander of the Ukrainian army, reported 2 things this week. First, that there were roughly 50,000 Russian and North Korean troops engaged up in Sumy and Kursk Oblast. Also reported that Ukrainian forces had stabilized that area of the front. Syrskyi also reported that Russia has built up about 111,000 soldiers in the Pokrovsk direction, which is a sizable number of forces to have in one area. Pokrovsk remains the center focus of Russian strategy this summer. But it's not changing anything in Pokrovsk, this buildup of forces.
No, it sort of isn't. And there's a couple reasons why. There's the tail to tooth ratio, right? So you got 100,000 guys at the most conservative level. That's only like 60,000 real fighters, right? The rest of these guys have to everything that is involved in the logistics and securing the ground lines of communications, electronic warfare, air defense, armor, mechanics, everything that goes with it, head cooks and bottle washers. The other thing, I mean, these are impressive numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, at what Omar Bradley could do or General Grant could do with 100,000 guys, that's significant. There's no Russian generals that can do that. They can't, and they have a big trouble bringing that combat potential to bear. The combat effectiveness of these Russian units is pathetic. So the other thing I will also say is this is the unimpeachable battle math that they prove every single day. They lose a battalion of men every day.
Yep.
So when you hear 100,000, that's 60 days of operations for these guys. And they'll recruit 30,000 more out of Kazakhstan or wherever the hell it is, but those guys only meet the burn rate. And that 1,000 guy limit is they rarely go under it, and they've gone as high as twice that in periods of extended combat operations.
Yeah.
I also read today, I wish I had a little bit more data on this, but at their rate of creep right now, it will take them 100 years to get to Lviv. Hey, I'm down for it, Vlad. If you are, you want to go 100 years. It's
Yeah.
the 100 Years' War. You know, all of this is important, but, you know, you don't underestimate your enemy, but don't overestimate them. They
Yeah.
lack command and control. They lack competency. They lack fundamentals and training. They're not going to win this. It's how long they can bleed for is the point.
Yeah, it really is the point. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, if we go to the maps in Kreminna, Chuck, we see all the evidence of what you were just speaking about, what I like to call the Russian odometer. You can advance 10 kilometers at the cost of 10,000 killed and wounded. And we've talked about Kreminna for the last several episodes because Russia created the salient and expanded it north of Liman and west of the Zarabets River. But as you like to say, reaching, occupying, and holding territory, three different things.
Yeah, absolutely. So there has been this Russian bulge. It has, gone across, and it reaches out there, as you can see on the map that we're talking about. But you can also see these 4 points of contact with Ukrainian forces in contact. Now that's 2, 3, 4, in some places 5 kilometers from what is supposed to be the zero line. That's pretty significant. What is west of Nove? Do the Russians really control it when there are 4 points of contact? And, no coincidences on your maps ever. If you're in the military business, no coincidences on your map. So I'm looking at 4 points of contact. They are all along the O Series highway, the 0526. We might be looking at a complete readjustment of the zero line here. I'd also point out that this is one of the areas where we are seeing entire tactical elements, mostly squad size, surrendering with the Russians. The prisoners report they haven't been fed. They don't have any water for 4 days. They can't fight anymore. And folks, if you want to try a little fasting experiment, you can go 40 days without eating. You'll lose weight. You'll look quite great, but you cannot go 4 days without water.
No.
You're going to hurt yourself. And not just hurt yourself, your ability to carry a rifle, run forward into combat, and fight for your life, it's pretty hard. Just your shooting kit weighs 60 pounds, right? Your rifle, all the stuff the Russians don't have, your radio, your helmet, your body armor, your magazines, your weapon, your thermal, your everything else, full battle rattle. It's a big physical exertion.
Yeah.
So we would be looking at, dare I say, a Russian collapse here around Kreminna. A little early to say that, but might be in the cards.
It could be. Of course, you also, if you lack water, you lose your wits pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. There's right. Total physical and mental collapse. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I looked back in time at the maps, thanks to your work, Chuck, in Kreminna. It was way back in January of this year that the Russians first crossed the Zarabets River and created a lodgment on the west of the Zarabets, and that lodgment ballooned into this salient. And it looks to me like Ukraine can collapse it pretty quickly. But, stop and think about that. This has been a 6-month operation of the Russians, not just the last few weeks.
Yeah, and so the Ukrainians, we often talk about this. It's what general officers get paid to do. They are supposed to be tacticians and strategists when you get high enough, but resource management is what's so important. So the Russians are coming across the Zarabets, and you can see the entire Zarabets on this map. It goes all the way down into the Severodonetsk there. Ukraine had to let them go somewhere. So you look at this map in the barred picture. You're not going to let them go to Liman, so you're going to let them go north.
Yeah.
So it's the Russians have been baited into what we call this inconsequential advance here. The other thing that is important to take away from this map is that Russians have 10-to-1 superiority in terms of troops numbers in this map that you're looking at. And you look at those three battle lines, contact points there to the east of the Zarabets Reservoir, Yamplovika, Zarachene, and Torske.
Yeah.
That's it, folks. You put your finger right there. That's what General Sherman is going to tell his commanders. I want you to kick ass, blast through Torske, and drive towards Liman. Look what they're doing instead. They're 25 kilometers to the north, and they're fighting over Nove. And what's up there? Folks, there's nothing up there. And if you look at the highest point of the extension of the zero line, look towards Lazove, there isn't even a tree around there. So most Russian soldiers are killed on the battlefield by FPV drones. So you think of yourself slinging your pack, your AK rifle, your funny hat, and you're walking in the open towards those places. The Russians are suffering trying to hold on to this inane terrain. Inane terrain. Oh, that's pretty good. I'm going to go.
It is inane. Wherever a Russian soldier puts his foot, you'll find inane terrain, Chuck. Again, I just happen to have the 10 January 2025 map from Kreminna out because I was comparing maps. Very, very little change between Torsky, Zanchina, and Yampolivka. It's literally unchanged in the last 6 months. A very slight Russian advance south from Kearney that really makes no difference whatsoever. Now, I can't imagine the Ukrainians are happy about maintaining this little pocket down there with their backs against the Zarabets Reservoir, but they've done it for 6 months.
It's amazing to me. And again, you are looking at some premier VDV units here, lots of guards units. They're just not performing. And again, so this is a great map, and you look at this. There you are fighting the Russians. You've got to give somewhere. This is a master class in trading dirt for time. right? So they have said, okay, we're going to let them, if they are going to surge, it's going to be the northern half of the Zerabets reservoir. And there's some Russian somewhere waiting to write his report to the Kremlin saying, we're closing in on the Oskil River. And apparently there's no one up there to call bullshit on this colonel and say, whoa, wait a minute, buddy. You want to be closing on Liman. Don't report to me that you're closing on an inane piece of river bank that is 15, 20 kilometers north of the primary objective. So again, you know, I can't tell you, as a SEAL, they beat this into your head. Do not underestimate your enemy. Assume they're smarter than you, they know more than you, and they got there first. Always assume that. But Alan, you and I have been looking at this map for 3 years.
Yeah.
You could draw it out of your head, as could I. Ukraine has done a masterful job in battle managing the Russians. They really have. And I know the fighting is tough here. It is horrendous, and especially down in the Zerabets forest, where it isn't a forest. It is a nightmarish landscape of busted trees and just a horrendous place. And it's hot, and it's almost jungly down here. But this is a great job of keeping the fight on your terms. You can't win everywhere, but you can make sure that where the enemy wins, it's not going to do them any good.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons Chuck and I focus on Kreminna. Just in a nutshell, you get to see Ukrainian strategy and tactics at work. And I'm going to say over the next 4 weeks or so, we'll see those tactics succeeding once again around Kreminna. Well, let's go to the other end of the zero line, Chuck, all the way over to Kherson. A lot of action on the south bank, the left bank of the Dnipro River. Once again, Ukrainian units in contact and calling in airstrikes.
Yeah, we have had we were just talking about, the 16-fold increase in Russian glide bomb activity. It might be even higher on the Ukrainian side in terms of, number of airstrikes. And within the last 18 months, we've seen a Ukrainian airstrike, something that meets the lowest bar in calling anything an airstrike, which is having an attack helicopter tip its nose up and volley fire all of its rockets in the general direction of Russia. Now we're seeing very precise precision strikes. Again, thanks to Paris for the AASM hammer bombs, which are being put to great use and showcasing their striking ability. If we are looking at the Kherson map here, you can see the two airstrikes there to the east of the Anatovsky Bridge. We haven't been back to Kherson in a while, and the map has changed a little bit. If we're looking in the area between the rail bridge, which is out of commission, and of course the Anatovsky Bridge, which has its spans dropped as well. The Russians have consolidated control in this area. There was previously a Ukrainian lodgment. If you look very closely at the map, you can see the little tributary that parallels the river, the Dnipro, and goes into Oleshki. The Russians have consolidated control over that. The Ukrainians are still active on the south bank. This contact point, it has penetrated the zero line right there at the M14 highway. So the Ukrainians actually advanced there. I suspect this was a raid-type operation. They approached surreptitiously and sprung it on the Russians. But of those two airstrikes, as Alan mentioned at the top of the show, they are targeting Russian drone control points. That's a priority target. If you don't know of the human safari operations, this is what the Russians call their pastime of attacking fire trucks ambulances, little old ladies pushing shopping carts, and I wish I was exaggerating, but I am not, human attacks on civilians in Kherson on the streets. So Ukraine is retaliating, and I love the idea of some Russian pimple-faced jerk hunting fireman, and he gets to have a 250-pound French guided bomb in his left nostril. So there is karma on the battlefield, folks, believe me.
Yeah. But I do think that's what Ukraine is attempting to do to bring some relief to the civilians in Kherson. The Russians use these human safaris. This is the name that Russians themselves came up with as a way to train their drone pilots in the use of FPV drones. So they're literally just sending these drones across the river into Kherson, looking for exactly what Chuck just said, people walking home from the grocery store, and or maybe a drone succeeds in lighting someone's garage on fire. Okay, they're going to wait for first responders to get there and then send other drones to attack those first responders. Something does have to be done to relieve Kherson from these constant, and they are daily, attacks by drones, relatively short-range attacks, of course. It's not the only place there are short-range drone attacks, but and you think that they can't do that much damage, but they do. About 400 Ukrainian civilians have been killed in these drone safaris that the Russians launch, and over 2,600 injured. So this takes a toll, and again, it is a civilian target that Russia chooses.
Yeah, and we haven't spent a lot of time on Kreminna in the last couple of months. I was surprised at how I looked at the last map I published. It was several months ago.
On Kherson.
Right. It's been essentially quiet, although I might say static. But folks, you are looking at, in the future, there is going to be a pivotal battle fought right on this map. You were looking at the confluence of the M14 and the M17 highway. The M17 highway goes to Crimea. So there will be a battle here at some point, but it's going to necessitate a major river crossing, and I'm not sure that's going to happen imminently, certainly not imminently, but later, when this war is in its final stages, there will be a battle of Oleshki, and that M17 highway is the prize.
Yeah. And that river crossing, of course, will be conducted by Ukraine. You hear Russians talk about crossing the Dnipro River up back into Kherson. It would be an operation I think the Ukrainians could invite because there's no way Russia would be able to do it.
Now, you and I are famous for encouraging the Russians to, in fact, do it by all means. Take a shot at Kherson, stage a major river crossing. But there's a couple reasons why that isn't going to happen. Not at least because of the small boat drill that we all saw, where Russians were literally running each other over with Zodiacs, which I honestly think it's one more observable aspect of their pathetic morale. Mm-hmm. I've handled Zodiacs. The guy did it on purpose, right? He doesn't want to cross the river, so he's going to foul up as many boats as possible and say, look, my pinky got stuck on the throttle. I don't know what he's going to say. But right now, the Russians are incapable of crossing the Dnipro River. There is no place on the zero line from Kherson to Kupiansk where they can consolidate enough force to a jumping off point to stage an attack. They just can't do it. They don't dare do it. And in the meantime, it's lose a battalion a day. And that hasn't changed, Alan. We've been reporting those 1,000-day losses for at least 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, it's the number I look for. I don't like it to fall under 1,000 a day. I know that it does from time to time. I can be disappointed by 900, but that's close enough. And yes, most days, 1,000 Russian casualties killed and wounded. And we talked about this a little bit in the last show, Chuck. Roughly 700,000 Russians fighting in Ukraine right now, or occupying some part of Ukraine. It sounds like a lot. It is an insufficient force to do what Russia is seeking to do this summer.
Yeah, and remember, we just talked about the Tokmak Melitopol corridor there. Russia is occupying Ukraine, right? You don't just get to fight the war and not look over your shoulder. So that tail to tooth ratio, they've got 100,000 people in the vicinity of Tokmak. Look, their lines of communication need to be defended. They need electronic warfare in this. Another thing we've seen in this war. Look, electronic warfare used to be something that happened at the division level, or aircraft carriers worried about it. Now, individual foot soldiers, individual vehicles need to have electronic countermeasures. And that constant battle that goes on between countermeasures and electronic warfare. We've seen the FPV drones now with they are wire guided, and we saw the films, and it was from Kreminna, a Ukrainian soldier walking across, and there were thousands upon thousands of fiber optic cables across this meadow, going both ways, back and forth, which was astounding. I mean, you saw he had like a bundle of, it was a foot and a half long with hundreds of cables on his leg.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
It basically is like walking through, I don't know, a snowy field when you come right down to it, and what's going to pile up on the tips of your snowshoes, snow. But in this case, an utter tangle of fiber optic debris around the guy's ankles and feet. It could easily trip him up, but he just dragged it along with him.
Yeah, it's well, we're going to see stasis, I think, in both on both sides of the Dnipro here, but bear in mind that Ukraine is also fighting a positional fight here. The Russians have to put people south of Kreminna, where they can do no harm to anybody, with the exception of killing civilians on the streets of Kherson, and tens of thousands of Russian troops are being frozen here. Again, because of that M17 highway. If they uncover it, Ukraine's going to thrust at Crimea. So the guys in the Kherson area of operations, they're doing a very important thing, even if it is simply positional warfare at this point, because every idiot Russian south of Kherson is not in Pokrovsk, not in Bakhmut, not in Kupiansk, not in Sumy. They are tucked into the corner pocket of this war where they can't really hurt anybody.
Yep, except themselves.
God will.
A couple of important things are happening, in the United States. Today on the Sunday news shows, Lindsey Graham said that President Trump had told him he supports the sanctions legislation that Lindsey Graham and Senator Blumenthal have introduced in the Senate. So these are sanctions that would be imposed on Russia and nations that trade with Russia or assist Russia in its war against Ukraine. And Graham seems confident that the president will make some kind of announcement tomorrow or sometime this week about imposing new sanctions on Russia. I certainly hope Senator Graham gets his wish.
Boy, I would hope so. Um, the president has done pretty well uh, to sort of dodge the responsibility and dodge the look that, look, Putin has been playing him for a mug, right? Is Russia interested in peace negotiations? Look at last night is the answer.
Yeah.
Right. And within a week, we will have an even bigger attack. And as far as I know, this one is developing into what is likely the largest attack so far in the war. But I promise, yeah, Alan, you and I know within 7 days, there'll be a bigger one.
Yeah.
It's simply the way it's going. That's not serious about peace. Face it, they're not. And you look at their targets, they're seeking to utterly destroy Ukraine. And look at every place they've put their hand. There is no more Bakhmut. There is no more Pokrovsk. There is no more Chasiv Yar. There almost is no more Kupiansk. Everywhere they can reach, they have destroyed. That is their purpose and their object.
Yeah. No, the list of places that Russia has destroyed in Ukraine is brings tears to your eyes. And I honestly feel, Chuck, if people could see with their own eyes, not just on Twitter, the various videos that are posted, but if they could see and smell the destruction in Ukraine, I don't think they would ever stop supporting Ukraine's fight to defend itself and defend its future and all of its families and its children.
Well, and you look at the resonance of information warfare, and there are still people in the United States who will shrug and say, well, Ukraine's full of Nazis. They've got this, they apparently have no grasp that this war has been going on for more than 10 years, that Russia started it, that Russia unlawfully annexed Crimea, that tens of thousands of Ukrainian children have been kidnapped from Ukraine, that thousands of Ukrainian civilians have perished in deliberate attacks against city centers. 1,500 hospitals and clinics have been deliberately destroyed and targeted. It just goes on and on. The ongoing campaign of chemical weapons on the battlefield that have evolved from tear gas grenades to now artillery and rocket shells full of asphyxiant agents, not anti-riot, asphyxiant war gases. Shrug it off. What does it mean? What does it mean that they launch ballistic missiles at Ukrainian cities every night? Well, that's when Iran does it. It makes the headlines. In Ukraine, what's it matter? Well, it does matter.
Yeah, it does matter. So don't stop caring about supporting Ukraine. Find ways that you can do it individually or enlist friends and families to join you in supporting Ukraine. Maybe it's a call to your member of Congress, or maybe it's finding a verified charity right here in this video. Just go to the video description after you finish watching the show, and you'll find about a dozen verified charities that cover all kinds of things. So you will be able to find some way to show your support of Ukraine. Chuck, anything else on your mind today?
Besides Operation Spiderweb 3.0, I am ever hope. Well, it's not even being ever hopeful. Look, they can't win this war. And there's two people who can't lose this war. Ukraine can't lose it because this is a genocidal war of extinction. But the other thing that can't lose this war is Vladimir Putin. This was his good idea, right? He went in and slammed 75-foot conference table and said, I want Ukraine subjugated. This is going to take 72 hours. 1 million casualties later, he is no closer than taking it. He holds less now than he did 7 days after the invasion started.
Yeah.
That's not winning, folks, and they're not going to win. And I would say this to, thank you to the people who listen to us. Thank you for the kind comments. We've got a hardcore of listeners. We appreciate it. And you're part of the information fight too. We want you to win the battle at the bar, win the battle at that dinner party. You just can gently remind them, well, it's inevitable Russia's going to win. And you can point out, well, I know this idiot Navy SEAL, and he says no one who's ever lost a battalion a day has ever won a war of conflict. It's all these things are true, folks.
Yeah.
All these things are true.
We're going to see what develops over the summer. My assessment is it's going to be all out terror, drone and missile strikes by Russia, because I don't think that their ground offensive is going to go anywhere. And I think there's a strong possibility that at the end of the summer, Russia may hold less Ukrainian ground than it did at the beginning of its summer offensive. But I think the primary news is going to be Russian terror in the air. And I do hope that people focus on that. I do hope that seeing this terror all aimed against Ukrainian civilians finally brings more sanctions by the United States, more sanctions by the European Union, an increase in military supply from the European Union, finally delivering Patriot air defense systems from the United States and any other kind of air defense system we can possibly send to Ukraine. And I would hope that there is someone in Congress, in the Pentagon, in NATO, who can tell Donald Trump the one thing that has never, ever been tried on behalf of Ukraine, and that's to arm them in full for a military victory. So why not try something none of your predecessors tried?
Yeah, let's do that. And the other thing is, look, I am encouraged that Senator Graham has spoken out. And remember, folks, Russia makes almost $1 billion every day still from trading energy with some of our erstwhile allies. Right now, as we speak, there are Russian shadow fleet tankers cross-decking oil in the Aegean Sea, in the economic exclusion zone of Greece, and a NATO member. So there's a lot we can do. Let's pinch this off where it counts. Those are the petrodollars that buy Kinzhal cruise missiles and Iskander missiles and everything else that is lobbed at Ukrainian cities. So let's stop that. And Alan has pointed out, look, Alan has worked on the Hill. When he tells you to call your congressman, look, he knows it works. Okay, it works. You don't have to talk to anybody. Call right now. You'll get an answering machine, but it'll get logged, right, Alan?
Yes, it will, as a matter of fact. If you don't want to talk to a live person, call on the weekends and leave a short message right to the point about supporting Ukraine. The very first thing an aide will do tomorrow morning when they arrive at the office is listen to all of those messages on the Senate and House office telephone line. So yeah, do that tonight. It's a great way to have an early 4th of July celebration, I guess. Look,
Absolutely.
Chuck and I are going to be back with more maps this week and discussion and analysis of any events that occur in Ukraine or elsewhere. So keep watching. Give us a like, share. Tell us what your very favorite episode has been. We've done more than 50 of these now, Chuck, which is something that astonishes me. And we will be back with a live stream sometime very soon as well.
Folks, we're not going to quit. We know you're not going to quit. Help us win the information war. Those little conversations with friends and family over hot dogs at the 4th of July, look, they actually mean something.
Yeah.
And that turns into political action. But this is the time of the show where we always say,
Slava Ukraini.
Heroim Slava. And we'll see you again, folks, real soon. Thanks for those likes, and see you again.